Hello. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be on the pod.
So what's your credibility for being here?
I'm in my 4th year of my classical studies degree with a minor in museum studies.
Where?
University of Guelph.
Crazy, me too.
No way.
It's
It's like we met there.
Wow. So let's talk about Alexander today.
Yeah, is that what we're doing here?
We are. How much do you know about him?
Very little.
Almost nothing?
I would say if I had like a little, oh, so then maybe he did this? And I'm like, oh, maybe, yeah, he did. And I can jump back into it, but other than that, I could not spit a fact on
Funny
Jeopardy.
because you were in Hellenistic history.
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay. So the idea for this podcast is art and crime. Which you might be like, how does that have to do with Alexander? Literally at all.
Surprisingly, so much.
That's what I'm saying. You don't even know what we're talking about, and you're like, yeah.
It's just classics as a whole, really. All of history.
It's a lot of crime. It's a lot of theft. And yeah. With art as well, I assume.
People be stealing. People be stealing,
People be doing.
Yes. Bad things.
But yeah, what I'm trying to talk about here, or at least for this episode, is kind of crafting Alexander as a character. Because I remember John Walsh, lecturer at the University of Guelph, now director of the School of Languages and Literature, and arguably a father figure to every student he teaches.
Absolutely. Rite of passage if you cry at his office.
He very bravely told me once, told the whole class, that when you're learning about history, this actually changed my entire perspective on history as a whole.
Yeah.
He said that when you're learning about characters, you don't want to look at them just as, like, names on a page.
Yeah.
They are, like, you need to really understand the history that you're learning. You need to craft their identity in your brain like you know them. Like, how I know you, I know Alexander.
Yeah.
After this research.
Yeah, they're not just, like, a figure that existed at one time. It's like they were a living human being who had thoughts, who had values, who had morals, motives, and ambitions. And they are literally not just, like, some, like you said, some name on the page. Like, that's not, that doesn't bring any value to it. They were, like, a 3D character.
Exactly. And the most annoying part is that the sources that we do have for these characters are biased. And I say that just because they're an author and we have no way of fact-checking them.
Oh, extremely.
Extremely. But I guess what I've always thought about while doing research in classics specifically is, like, this is an isolated, like, time period. Like, this is an isolated event. We can almost look at it like a case study. Because, like, it happened and it's over.
Yeah.
Like, whereas with more current histories, like, it's still ongoing. Like, the ancient Greeks, like, they're donezo. Like, I don't think there's anyone lasting here being like, do you remember when I went to this event?
Yeah, and it's like, it brings in with, like, more modern history and stuff, like, there is still existing generational traumas and things that's happening and still affecting how people live and exist today. But, like, the ancient Greeks, some people are like, yeah, I'm part Greek.
Yeah, but I don't think anyone's
ancient Greek.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's like, I feel traumatized from the Trojan War.
Unless you're still Achilles whining.
Yeah, for real. But yeah, so, like, I guess when John told me that about the characters, saying, like, you want to get to know them as characters, or as actual people, rather than just facts in a history book, it made me realize that learning about classics and learning about these people is less about memorizing the facts, but rather understanding what they've done and what their legacy is, what they've produced for us, and how I can apply that to myself and to the people around me, and, like, really look at them as a case study of, like, why did they do this?
Yeah.
What type of person were they? What made them do this? Like, because their history is so parallel to our own, and I feel like nobody talks about that.
No. And, like, I always look at it, well, not always, but, like, John told me the same thing, and it's like, you kind of have to take it as, like, you are an investigator, and you have to, like you said, it's a case study, like, to bring it back to, these are crimes, you have to be, like, a criminal investigator and be like, what was their upbringing? Why did they do these things? Like, who were they trying to do these things for? And, like, in order to know that, you really need to go kind of back to the beginning. And like you said, bringing it back to like bias, it's like that's also like the extremely difficult part, but it's so valuable because you have to also analyze who the authors that we're looking at are. Like with like some of the wars and stuff, we don't even have the other side's viewpoint. So it's like you really have to kind of like take that approach of like, you just really gotta go deep, man.
You really gotta go deep.
You gotta, we are classics people who also apparently are psychologists.
Yeah, we are unofficially psychologists because I feel like you have to be.
Oh, absolutely.
You so have to be.
And that's what's like the fun, interesting thing about it too, is like you really just get to be like, what if he did this for this reason? And then someone's like, you know what, that's a really good thought, but also, what if he did this for this other reason?
Exactly. And I feel like one of the major issues in scholarship right now is because we're so far removed from classics, I feel like it's very easy to place modern bias on the events happening in ancient Greece, but you have to like place yourself in the brains of the ancient Greeks. But also, I don't think putting modern bias on it is false.
No.
Like, I think there's still value to that.
Definitely. And like I actually saw it because I was in an ancient Greek philosophy class, and our professor, our teacher, he was saying like, you know, this was like so many years ago. Like this, like the stoicism back then is different from the stoicism now. Like it is so, like it's based on the same thing, but it's very different. And like, for example, ancient Greek philosophy is super selfish. Like they were like, I need this for myself. And people in my class were taking a modern bias and a modern view on it, whereas I was the only classics kid in there that I knew of. And I was like, I'm not a philosophy expert, but you guys have to understand that it was so different. Like, they did not have the same values. Like, their values were completely different. Like, the issues with, like marriages and things, it's like, well, that was normal for them.
Yeah.
And it makes it really interesting.
Well, this is a beautiful precursor.
Yeah, super inspiring.
What a little intro. And that's on source material.
Yeah, no kidding.
So, okay, Alexander. He was a guy. I feel like everyone knew who he was, famously known as Alexander the Great. He was a successful conqueror. He died in 323 BCE, I think on June 11th.
That's 2 days before my birthday. No, that's John's birthday.
I'm so sorry that you were trumped by...
No, I am Alexander. My name's Alexis. We were joking about this.
Hi, Alexander. Nice to meet you. My name's Callie Gibson.
Nice to meet you. I'm Alexander the Greatest.
I'm so happy talking about his early childhood. I can now speak to the original source.
Yeah, definitely. I'm super unbiased.
Okay. So yeah, Alexander III, famously known as Alexander the Great, was a very successful conqueror, thus being called the Great. And he's famous for Hellenizing Persia and Hellenizing that which was considered barbaric. What was Persia considered barbaric? Or was it just considered, like, foreign?
I believe Persia was considered foreign.
Yeah.
But it was, which we will probably get into when we talk about who he really is. It was Macedonians.
Yes.
They were considered barbaric in, like, that is in their literature. Like, the ancient Greek literature is barbarians, heathens almost.
Yeah. Barbarians is totally an outdated term, but in the context of classics, it is very valid to utilize that. But yeah, so he Hellenized Persia, which is funny because he's Macedonian, but we'll get into that later. And he was just willing to sacrifice everything. Like, he's known for, there's lots of movies about him. I think with Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, ?
Oh? What one?
Alexander, the movie.
Oh, I've never seen it.
Yeah, super famous and just very well known. And I think you could say Alexander the Great to anybody and they know at least an idea of who he is.
They definitely, I would feel, know the name.
Yeah.
If not the details. I know the name.
You know the name.
I know the name.
Considering you are him, I would hope so.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, he was born in I'll set the scene. I'll set the tone.
I feel like I'm listening to a bedtime story.
Yeah. Cue the lyre music. So he was born in 356 BCE. Picture it. Little blonde guy. Little blonde, little man.
Was he blonde?
I think so.
He is now.
At least Brad Pitt was.
The frosted tips.
The frosted tips. So he was born in the year of an Olympic festival. And he was also born the year that the Temple of Ephesian Artemis burnt down.
Oh my god.
Let's break this down. First of all, red flag.
Huge. First of all, green flag.
Green flag.
The Olympic festival. That's got to be like, you're gonna be the greatest.
Arguably,
You're gonna be the greatest Alexander. But also, what was it? A temple?
A temple. Yeah. So okay, the Temple of Ephesian Artemis. Artemis, Greek god. One of the Olympians. Artemis was known for her.
I got you. Artemis was the goddess of the hunt. She was Apollo's twin sister. And Apollo was, he was the sun god.
He was a dude.
He was also a dude.
Yeah.
But Artemis was the goddess of the moon.
Yeah.
But she was the virgin goddess, like had all these, like, young female huntresses that would come around her. Kind of like, less of a, like, she's a fighter.
She's a fighter.
She's a bow.
Not a lover.
No. Not like Athena in the sense of, like, war, but...
Yeah, so Artemis, big muchacho in the Greek gods, I would like to preface, was a religion for the Greeks. It was a religion, and they very much, in that way, a lot of people in ancient Greece tried to emulate that and emulate the qualities of the people that they looked up to.
Yeah, and they also would dedicate, you said it was, one more time, the, what, Artemis?
The Temple of Ephesian Artemis.
Ephesian Artemis, so that's...
Ephesian is just the location.
Oh, okay, because I was going to say, usually, a lot of times they named, like, temples and things after the epithets of the goddesses or the gods. Because the gods were, like, there was no disconnect between religion and state. It made up everything.
Yeah. Everything they saw in the world around them, they rationalize it. They're like, oh, there's an olive tree here? Yeah, Athena did that.
Yeah. We'll just name our entire city after her.
Yeah, what a flex.
Yeah.
But anyways, so yeah, the Temple of Ephesian Artemis, which I will just refer to as Artemis's temple, because location does not matter right now.
Yeah.
It burnt down, which you'd be like, why is that important? That's not really that important. But what's crazy is that in mythology, it was an idea that gods, like, inhabited their temples so that when they left, or if they, like, abandoned their temple, it would burst into flames.
What?
No, that was a thing.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And it was, I forget why. It's not that important, but leaving it was basically like...
Well, you're abandoning the city.
You're abandoning the city, you're abandoning the place of worship that everyone goes to be like, I go here because I need help. And Artemis was just like, nah, I gotta go.
Well, especially, I guess, because I thought that it was maybe named after, like, Artemis the Great Huntress or something. I didn't know what the Greek meant, but for it to be named after the city and for it to just burst into flames or burn down, that has got to be the hugest bad omen ever.
Yeah.
To be like, yeah, this guy's born, and then, guess what? He was born the same day the temple burnt down.
Yeah. Also, I totally forgot to mention this, but all of the facts in this is based off Plutarch's lives.
Oh, Plutarch.
Oh, Plutarch. Yeah, he was just writing about people's lives. He was doing the original psychology.
No, for real.
Yeah.
Like, it's... we still don't really know how he knows all those things, but super reputable.
Source? Trust me.
Source? I was there probably. But very reputable in classics world. Huge primary source.
So as you already said about being great, the Olympic Festival, everyone surrounding Alexander's birth was like, we gotta have a great guy. Like, this is the son of the king. He has to be great.
Oh.
So the Olympic Festival was like, wow, he's probably gonna be super strong and fierce and awesome. And then the Temple of Ephesian Artemis burning down, Plutarch suggests that, he doesn't suggest, he alludes to the fact that maybe it's because Artemis went to attend Alexander's birth.
Oh!
So she left her temple to go to this guy's birth.
Whoa.
Like, he's that important.
See, I thought maybe it was, like, someone set fire to it.
Oh, that's a good theory.
Someone in the city, maybe a political figure, was like, we gotta look into this one later. Like maybe a political figure got someone to be like, set fire to the temple.
Yeah, note that for later.
Yeah. I'll write that one down. I'll scratch that one down.
But
with my pen.
So you might question, I think everyone's questioning, why is this guy so important? Like, I know that looking at it from a modern perspective, obviously we know why he's so important. It's because he's the son of a king. It's because he did such great things. But he's a little baby man right now. He hasn't done anything. He's not even existing yet.
No.
So, from Plutarch, he says that before he was even born, when he was being conceived between Philip, Alexander's father, and Olympias, Alexander's mother, it can be said that Philip, his dad, peeped through the chink of a door when he saw the god under the form of a serpent in the company of his wife.
Oh,
so
crap.
That's referring to Zeus. It suggests in the material that it's referring to Zeus. So what makes it such a big deal is that Plutarch is basically saying Alexander's a demigod.
Well, yeah, divine lineage was huge.
Exactly.
It's like divine right of kings.
So then, the temple of Artemis burning down would then support the fact that it was a divine birth, because obviously you would go for your nephew's birth.
Yeah.
So that checks out.
Well, they've got it all figured out.
They do. I don't even know why we're talking about this. They got it all figured out.
Done.
Yeah. So just that's all to say. There's very high expectations of him.
Okay.
And
was this the first child of Philip?
No,
do you know?
It was not the first child. No, but he had a lot. So what is important is that it was the first purely Macedonian child.
Oh.
Philip was a little playa. He was a little playa. He was having children with everybody. Not everybody, but enough people to like have a little army of mini Philips to like choose from.
Philip the Third, Philip the Fourth,
Philip the 86th. I have no idea how many kids he had. I don't care about Philip, if I'm going to be honest.
I don't blame you. No one does.
Yeah, so Philip had that moment. It was a dream. He had a dream. And then after that, like, instance, he had another dream. And it was that okay, this one's a little bit confusing. Before his birth, Philip had dreams about the potential of his son, whereas Philip interpreted the dream. He had a dream that he was pressing a seal onto his wife's womb with the icon of a lion.
Oh.
So, like, if you know anything about classics, who's associated with lions? Heracles.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
And what is Heracles? A demigod.
Yeah.
So,
I was going to say that.
Not only did he see, is that true? I don't know. He saw the conception of his son from not him, by Zeus. Artemis went to attend the birth, and that his wife's womb was being sealed with the image of a lion to then be like, you're a demigod, bro.
Well,
so
that's really just kind of like 3 strikes. You've got a demigod child.
And even like Aristander of Telemessus, not really important who he is. He's just an ancient author. He even interpreted that dream as that the queen was having a child of a boy who would one day prove stout and courageous as a lion.
Well, so this was relatively widely believed.
It was so widely believed. Like, it was so, I think the anticipation coming up to his birth was so high. I almost feel bad for him.
Like the expectations.
Yeah, because imagine being born and just like the entirety of not only Macedonia, where your dad is the ruler, but like kind of everybody else too, like the Greeks, probably the Persians, like they're just like expecting this like godly child to happen, and like what if you suck?
Yeah.
Like what if you are just lame?
Yeah, you could just like, you are clumsy.
Yeah.
You go onto the battlefield and you drop your sword.
I know, the first battle you twist your ankle.
You go down not from a stab, but you go down because you just like tweaked your ankle a little.
Yeah, you're like, I gotta go home.
You get a leg cramp.
Oh god.
You have asthma.
That's probably why none of his other sons works. They're all clumsy now.
They had asthma, they needed glasses.
But yeah, so before he even was born, he was connected to not only one, but 2 gods. That's huge. Most people can't even say they're connected to one, or like even remotely close to one.
Yeah.
Like other people are like, yeah, my cousin's sister's brother's uncle was probably a demigod.
They're really they're stretching the 6 degrees of separation like crazy. They're like 16 degrees of separation.
Oops. Okay. So, growing up in Macedonia, you already gave a little bit of context, but Macedonia was like, they were right outside of Greece. I can't draw a map through audio, but just like picture it like the states are to Canada. Like they're touching.
They're Greek adjacent.
They're Greek adjacent, and they really wanted to be Greek because Greece at this time was one of the largest political powers. They had the most influence. I would say in some ways they were the most developed, which we learn later is untrue because Persia and Egypt and all
which, like I said, we don't have a ton of sources from those places.
We don't have a ton of sources. But let's also just say Greeks are very narcissistic.
Oh, huge!
Huge narcissists. And Macedonians wanted to be that so bad.
Oh,
they wanted to be so bad. So they grew up idolizing Greek culture. And that can even be seen in Alexander's own family. Because his mom, Olympias is not her name. I don't know.
Is it?
I don't remember. But she renamed herself Olympias. It was some like boring Macedonian name.
Some like Philip.
Something like Philip. Poor little Philip.
So you said that he was a full Macedonian because both his parents were Macedonian.
Yes. So he was like pure blood. So he was like the elite child.
Because they really wanted him to be king of Macedon.
Well, think of like British royalty. Like they want like purebred Englishmen.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Is it's like waiting for the birth of this child is like waiting for William and Kate's kid. It's like, are they gonna have a boy? They better have a boy.
Yeah. No. See, we literally haven't changed at all.
Oh God, no.
So another thing with Macedonia is that they were consistently involved with war, and like not even just from their own actions, but just the fact that they were situated, Greece on one side, Persia on one side. So people were crossing through Macedonia like nonstop. Like people were like, oh, we actually have a little rift going on with Greece right now. Can we just like walk through your streets to like get our army to the other side?
Some people see like a big group go and they're like, oh, I wonder what's going on over here.
Is there a parade today?
Oh, is there a triumph?
Oh, nope, it's just the Persians.
Oh, I have a helmet on now.
Yeah. So yeah, they were just
the Persians.
But they're consistently involved with war, and I think that shaped a lot of what the Macedonians, like their values and their morals. Like there are a lot of source material, and even Plutarch himself suggests that, like Macedonians, everything is with conflict. You take what you want through conflict, and you get it that way.
There's no negotiations.
No negotiation, and they also like coming from Greece, like they wanted to be them so bad. The Greeks were very much like, we have the power, you don't. We take what we want because it's ours. Yeah,
they take by force, and Macedon didn't have as much authority, therefore they kind of had to, you know, have a little bit of physical fights with it. If they wanted
physical fights, and then so confident on the outside, but I think there was still that, very much that insecurity of the fact that they weren't Greek.
Greece is the big brother. They're like, not the big brother in the sense of, like, we're watching over you with the cameras, but the big brother in the sense of, like, you look up to them. Mm-hmm. You're like, he is so cool. He's got, like, a skateboard. I want the skateboard.
Yeah, you have Athens, I want an Athens.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna, like, copy everything you do, and I can't do it as good as you.
Yeah, totally.
And also, you hate me. The Greeks hated the Macedonians.
Yeah. But yeah, so they were just constantly like an insecurity and like trying to like, they were learning that what you want, you have to take through force. And then Alexander was born into this very insecure and very unstable political society. And then there's so many expectations on him. So he walked into this world with trauma already.
I kind of feel bad for him.
I do too. After doing all this research, I was like, man, imagine he wasn't who he was. He probably could have been a good guy.
Yeah, and like we said, the importance of learning who he is as a person. You realize, oh wow, he had huge shoes to fill, because I'm assuming all these fights with Macedon, his dad was kind of helping out.
Oh, absolutely.
His dad probably wasn't leading the armies, but he was telling them what to do.
Yeah, no, exactly. And he was so like even on top of that, we'll get to Philip, but
slay.
So when Alexander was born, his dad. So okay, I'll give a little bit of context on Philip because I feel like we need it.
Yes, please.
So Philip was the unlikely king of Macedon.
Oh gosh, that's not good.
Philip had 2 older brothers.
What?
And if the listeners don't know, it is very much like the royal family. Like, if you're born first, you're the one who gets in power. So, like, Philip was not supposed to be king. He was not supposed to be in power.
No.
But then both of his brothers just died.
What?
Yeah, they just died. I think
Drop dead.
I think one was in war and one was through sickness. We don't care about them. But he became king.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Way to go, Philip.
Right?
He probably wasn't even mentally ready for that.
No, exactly. And also with, like, in the insecurity of Macedonian society and him himself being insecure. Like, he's the little brother to these guys who died.
Oh my gosh, he's the double little brother.
He's double little brother. He's double insecure in an already insecure society.
Whoa.
So he becomes king, and then everyone looks up to him, and he has to fill these shoes himself. Already what we're, like, us as empaths are looking at Alexander. But, like, Philip, I feel bad for him too.
I kind of feel bad for the whole family.
I kind of feel bad for people that were in ancient Greece and Macedon, if I was honest.
Wow, it's almost like their quality of life was kind of not the best. It's almost like we live in 2023.
And they live in a long time ago.
However many years.
Yeah.
At least 5.
At least you're not wrong. But yeah, so Philip, he was the unlikely king. And then so when Alexander was born with such great expectations already, Philip was in the midst of a war. He was in the middle of tackling a Persian state when he was born. So immediately coming out of the womb, he basically might as well have handed Alexander a sword.
Oh,
while the umbilical cord was still attached.
He cut it with a sword.
He
made Alexander cut it himself. Yeah. So Philip was like, my son is finally born. He's like definitely a demigod.
Uh-huh.
Like, there's no doubt about it, because dreams were also a big thing, like with prophecy and stuff. And then he's like, well, sorry kid, I gotta go.
Yeah, I gotta go.
I've gotta conquer some places.
Yeah.
Really quick.
So,
I need more gold.
Dad's Gonzo being a big ruler.
Yikes.
And then Alexander was also raised in the palace of Aegea. I knew that. I doubted myself.
Can I see what it says?
Because it's the Aegean Sea.
Aegean Sea.
Aegean. So Aegea.
Aegea?
He was born in a palace.
Aegea.
He was born in a palace. Like the typical, like, Emperor's New Groove. He's on top of a hill. Everyone else, all the peasants are down below. Like, he was just in this bubble, constantly being fed the fact that he was amazing.
Symbolism is amazing. This is crazy.
But he was, like, in a little bubble of, like, not only the praise that he was getting, but also high education, war experience, like, physical war training. Like, he was being raised, like, the Spartans were training their little kiddies.
Yeah,
like, he was raised to be a weapon.
They're building a weapon with a massive ego.
Yeah.
And, huge expectations.
He thought that it's Alexander's world. Everyone else is revolving around him.
Yeah. He's like Richie Rich.
Yeah, he's Richie Rich. He was fully on a pedestal. So, yeah, he just total promotion of violence his entire childhood, on a pedestal. He thought the world was owed to him. And I think that really informs his actions in all.
Yeah, I'd say.
But going back to his parents, Philip, Alexander was definitely born as an asset. Like, already having other kids too. Like, I think it wasn't outlined the timeline that he had his other kids, but I think that once Philip was finally in a position where he was king, he's like, oh no, like, I need to produce an actual rightful heir. And rightful in the Greek way, like, in the ancient way of being like, it has to be pure blood, male, strong. Yeah. So the birth of Alexander was purely an asset for him, and I think that informed a lot of how he approached his guardianship with Alexander. Mm-hmm. Like, I can guarantee he was not a great father.
He's got daddy issues, like, big time.
Philip's got daddy issues, and he's given Alexander daddy issues.
Oh, it's generational.
Generational daddy issues. So he just wants his son to be so good. Like, Alexander may as well have been, like, a piece, like a medal for him, like a trophy.
Yeah, like
to,
a war
show
medal.
Off to everyone. Yeah. And Alexander saw him as a huge success, and I don't blame him, because in the world that he grew up in such like a war heavy society, like he saw his dad doing all this conquering and like how good he was doing, and he was in the midst of a war when he was born. His whole childhood, it's like, your dad is off fighting, like conquering these people. This is so great. Alexander looked up to him, even though he might not have been a good father. He was still like, wow, you're really impressive.
He was still what a good king should be. He should be going off and conquering things for the city or the country, or and growing their assets and things like that.
And this is really sad, but Plutarch says that Alexander at one point, he was at school. I don't know how Plutarch got this. He probably made it up.
Not gonna lie, Plutarch says like, oh, this person said this 5-minute speech verbatim all the time.
Yeah, like, did you have a recorder?
Yeah.
How fast can you write, bro?
He's a stenographer.
But he said that Alexander said in school to his classmates, where I would like to say there would have been no one present.
What?
He says, this is Alexander, by the way. This is my Alexander voice. Boys. He says, boys, everything will be achieved first by my father, with no great brilliant deeds left for me to accomplish together with you.
Whoa.
So he was basically like, my dad is so great, he's going to achieve everything and leave us nothing to achieve.
He's going to conquer the world.
He's going to conquer the world.
King of the world.
King of the world. So Alexander truly thought that of his dad as a rival.
Whoa.
I think so.
I didn't even notice that.
Because he's like, no great brilliant deed will be left to accomplish together with you, to his classmates.
Whoa.
Because, so he was born with all these expectations of him doing something great. And then being young and being in that bubble of like, Macedonians are great, Macedonians are awesome, Macedonians should control the world.
Yeah.
He saw his dad starting to control the world, and he's like, wow, there's going to be nothing left for me.
Yeah. And also, like, going to war and being in the military and being like, well, a great conqueror was good for any man. That's what a strong man did do in the Greek world. And, so for the fact that he also is bringing it up to, like, his peers and being like, yeah, my dad is so good that you will never be as good as me, even though, obviously, they're probably noble enough to go to school with Alexander,
Exactly.
public school.
Yeah.
So it's like they would have had the chance, but not because Alexander is or Philip is so amazing.
Yeah. And at one point, like, I guess I just feel bad. Like, there's such unrealistic expectations placed on Alexander, and he was literally trying to outmatch a man that was more than twice his age.
And also his dad, and also he's what, 9?
Yeah, no, literally, he's like 9.
To have those ideas at 9 years old, like, or in your youth, we won't put an age on it because I don't know, but to have that idea of like, this is what I'm supposed to do and I can't do it and I will never ever be as good, that is so detrimental to a human being's like mind. And to be like bred with that, where everybody is telling you that, and like, you're just so young and you know for a fact, at least what you think is a fact, that you will literally never be able to do that is terrible.
Yeah. So with that, there wasn't really a lot of opportunities for Alexander to showcase his skills. Like, did he help dad on the battlefield in like the local ones? It was like, bring your kid to work day. Philip was bringing Alexander to kind of train him to be a leader. And he did well. Like, he did really well, but he didn't really have an opportunity to shine as an individual until one time he took up his father to a challenge.
Whoa.
So they were, I don't know whether they were at a festival or whether there was just a horse present. But anyways, Philip was trying to tame this horse, and he could not. It was an untamable horse, in terrible behavior, super aggressive. But Alexander was like, you know what, Dad? I'm going to do something for once that you can't. And he wanted to tame the horse. He wanted to claim it as his own. So he did. And he was extremely impressed. And he got on that horse. He rode it around and like showed up his father basically. And his dad, I think this is one of the only moments that Philip was actually a good father. He was so proud of him, like so proud. And Plutarch says that he said, this is Philip to Alexander, my boy, look for a kingdom to match yourself. Macedonia is not large enough for you.
Oh my good!
Isn't that so wholesome?
That kind of just broke my heart.
Right? But those words alone, Macedonia is not large enough for you.
Oh, you've got to conquer the world, my boy.
Yeah, that is a precursor to why everyone knows Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great conquered the entirety of Persia and Asia.
Whoa,
Not the entirety of Asia, but almost the entirety.
That's a lot of like Earth.
That's a lot of Earth.
Also, I would just like to go back to the fact that, you mentioned like Alex Alex. We're on a nickname basis now. from a young age is basically saying, according to Plutarch, that my dad is my rival. And then in his teenagehood, perhaps, he's saying, my dad is my rival, and I just be my rival.
Yeah.
That is me taking on this helm. The horse is symbolic of the helm of power of Macedonia.
Mm-hmm. And I think that was almost like a taste of like a drug. Like, I think...
Whoa.
I know, that sounds extreme.
No, that's kind of drama.
No, that's so drama. Because his entire life, he's felt so insecure and so, like, just defeated because he can't even achieve anything because his dad is so awesome. And then finally he, like, did it. He defeated his father in a way. And that's, like, a taste of, like, I did it.
And his father was okay with it.
His father was okay with it.
His father's like, finally.
Yeah.
You did it. You finally did it.
He finally achieved the greatness that he had when he was younger. Or that they expected him to have. So I think that was a drug for Alexander. I think that... Would it be dopamine?
Dopamine? Adrenaline.
Adrenaline, dopamine.
Serotonin.
All of the above.
All of the onins.
All of the onins flooded through Alexander, and he's like, oh my god, like, I want to chase this feeling for the rest of my life.
I would.
Me too.
I'd want that.
I can't tame a horse, period.
I can't even get close to one. They freak me out.
They have really big heads.
They're huge.
They're huge, way bigger than you think they are.
You step behind one, they'll knock you out.
Yeah. Alexander says nay. He tamed it.
Whoa!
What a guy.
That was good.
But so yeah, that's kind of the most of the information we have about his dad. And I would also like to state that it was at another point said by Plutarch. He's quite literally the only source in this because he's one of the only people who wrote about lives of people because that was not important.
Plutarch's lives. That was his most important biographers.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like really the only source we have for all these people, which is kind of sad. I would just love to go back in time and be like, I want to be where Plutarch was.
Right?
I want to be where the people are. Like, how did he know all these things?
Right? So, but one thing that Plutarch does say is that Philip never had the intention to fully conquer the entirety of Persia.
No?
He kind of just wanted to, like, tackle a bit of it, to, like, gain a little bit of, like, respectability.
Gain a little bit of ground, so maybe he could give a little bit of authority to his son.
Exactly, but emphasis on he never meant to conquer the world. He meant to conquer a piece of the world. And Alexander, of course, wanting to outdo his father now, was like, you did a little bit, I'm going to do it all.
Wow. The pieces are coming together. I'm kind of speechless. I'm not going to lie. This is kind of really cool.
Are you an Alexander stan?
I'm an Alexander stan, #1 fan, Alex Head.
Yeah, so just I'm going to do a little bit more on his mom, just because it's an important piece. You got to get both sides.
Oh, God, yeah. They make up your entire childhood.
But there's way less information about Olympias because she's a woman.
Yep.
Women don't matter,
Classic.
arguably.
Yeah. Classics.
Classic.
Women don't matter. Classics.
So, but what we do know is that, #1, she renamed herself after Olympias to be Greek. But #2 is that, this is kind of just a fact, she was infatuated with her son, like obsessed with the idea of her son, because the entirety of her success relied on it.
Infatuated how?
No, just like, not in that way.
Okay.
In like a, this is my son, I love you, like you
that's my boy!
Yeah, kind of like an, I will do anything to make sure you're successful.
I will do anything.
Anything. So, anyways, so women at this time were plagued with the harsh realities of misogynistic environment, and she herself was an object of political compromise. Like, not only was Alexander an asset to Philip as an heir, but Olympias was an asset as well, as a wife, like, to produce an heir.
Yeah,
both
that's
of them
pretty
were,
much all they were. Both
of them were just cogs in a machine that is the Macedonian society.
God.
That was bars. That was a
No,
quote.
that was all kind of bars.
Could you visualize it?
Yeah. We gotta start beatboxing.
So she was theorized to be an adulteress.
Whoa.
She's a baddie.
That was kind of out. That was kind of random.
I
You
know.
want this perfect Macedonian family, you want a perfect Macedonian heir, and then you're just gonna go around and be unloyal to your husband and be a bad wife.
Right? Crazy.
Oh gosh.
But it's not really that out of pocket if you think about the dreams that Philip had about her and Zeus conceiving Alexander. And I think that's mostly where the adulterous stuff comes from, which I feel like is not very fair. Considering that story comes from Philip.
It comes from Philip. It's also, so first of all, once again, comes the issue of bias.
Mm-hmm.
But also, he had a dream, and so automatically she is cheating.
Yeah, for real.
Because you know what? Women.
Women suck.
Not our viewpoint. That is not our viewpoint.
Women sucked in ancient anything.
Yeah,
in antiquity. Up
weren't-
until, honestly, like 50 years ago.
Yeah, they were not written about. They weren't put on the census, I don't believe.
Yeah, the perspective of women is never prioritized in literature or histories.
Well, they weren't allowed to do anything.
Exactly. But yeah, so with that, being an adulteress, obviously she was given the, like, pretext that she had a vicious temper and she was, like, manipulative.
Oh, classic.
Which, with the stories, Plutarch does say that when Alexander went off to war and, like, was away from her for a while, she was saying stuff like, when will Alexander leave off slandering me to Juno? Juno, for context, is Hera.
Yeah.
That's Zeus's wife, for
So,
context.
in theory, that's Alexander's dad's wife. That's his stepmom.
That's his stepmom.
stepmama.
Yeah, stepmama. But she was guilting him, being like, you're gonna talk badly about me when you're gone. And then, but when he was leaving, she would, like, reveal the secrets of his birth to him, being like, you are so much more than, like, your father. Like, just trying to, like, really, like, dig her fingers in to be like, I am a key part of your, like, I'm the only one who's, like, truly your family.
Well, I conceived you. You are my blood.
You are mine.
Gods
brought you into this world, and I
can take you out. Gods don't have blood.
Yeah.
They have ichor, unrelated. But, so, like, she's the only family he really has.
But pretty much, like, all we need to know about Olympias is that, like, they sent letters to each other when they were away, and, like, he would send her stuff, like, loot from the wars to be like, here's a gift for you, mama.
Have a diamond ring, mama.
Just, like, consistently, it was reinforced, her role within his life was reinforced in order to stay relevant as a person of power. So she just really badly, Philip had many wives, and she wanted to be the most important one.
Mama's boy.
Mama's boy. So, speaking of mama's boy and daddy issues, Alexander had another father figure.
No.
Aristotle.
What?
Yeah. Aristotle was Alexander's, like, private teacher.
What? Like Aristotle, like
the philosopher Aristotle that we quote to this day.
Oh my god.
Imagine having that education.
You should be the smartest man.
Right?
If you have the philosopher of, like, arguably one of the philosophers of all philosophers as your teacher, you should be the most smart, cunning, like, worldview man ever.
Mm-hmm. And he was Macedonian, and I believe Aristotle was Greek.
Aristotle was Greek.
So they brought Aristotle to Macedonia to teach Alexander.
Which is kind of crazy because, once again, Greeks hated Macedonians.
Mm-hmm. And so, but the craziest part is that Plutarch describes Aristotle as treating Alexander as an academic equal. I don't know whether that was just his philosophy of teaching, and whether he was, like, kind of like John is to us. Like, he treats us as equals. He sees our opinions as, like, he's learning from us as we're learning from him. And I think that was kind of the situation.
And also Greek, like, teachings was very much like, I have this question. Do you have, like, any answer for it? And then it was just discussion, primarily. So that would make sense to be kind of equals. But that's also crazy.
So crazy. Like, I know that Alexander didn't... Although Aristotle was a celebrity at this point. I was gonna say that he wouldn't realize how much of a celebrity Aristotle would be.
No, Aristotle's Aristotle.
Yeah, he was like the guy from the get-go.
Yeah, he's pretty huge.
He's a big wig.
Crazy.
But yeah, so from Aristotle, Alexander learned about philosophy, learned about morals, learned about logic, learned about medicine and the arts. And if you think about it, Philip was gone. So Aristotle would have really been a father figure.
He is Papa number 3?
Papa number 3! Oh my goodness. Alexander just has so many papas.
So many papas.
So Aristotle gave Alexander what he lacked from Philip, which I think was majority of his, like, who he was. Like, to Philip, he was just an asset, and then to Aristotle, he was a person.
Yeah.
So a lot of his self-worth, I think, came from Aristotle, but then he was insecure in the fact that his father didn't see that in him.
And I think the two of those, like, having, like, such, like, an educated view on philosophy and culture with the arts and, like, stuff like that, combating against that insecurity, that has got to make just, like, such a confusion, you know? Like, especially because you're also growing up.
Yeah.
Like, your where you live is constantly at war. Like, and, like, the traditions and things like that is constantly being challenged. And your Macedonia is a country.
Yes.
I'm not crazy.
No, you're not crazy.
Macedonia is a country, so your country and its power is constantly being questioned and constantly being threatened. So that is just, like, a mixing pot of not really a great situation for the brain.
Yeah. For real. And at one point, Plutarch says that, going back to the academic equal, is that Aristotle gave Alexander, and I quote, more abstruse and profound theories which these philosophers, by the very names they gave them, professed to reserve for oral communication. Translation to better English.
Thank you.
He's basically saying that Aristotle gave Alexander, like, these ideas and these thoughts that only the elite philosophers would think of, and that they reserved only for oral, like, they only wanted to talk about it amongst themselves because it was so slay of a...
It's a boys' club.
It's a boys' club. They didn't want this stuff to be written down because they're like, we want to keep this between us for now.
Do we know what it is?
Yes. We do know what it is.
Yes!
I don't have it in here because it's not relevant.
Oh, you'll tell me about it later.
I will tell you about it later. I'll put in the notes for the podcast later.
Yes, please.
But it was, and Alexander was part of that boys' club. And he was, like, part of that elite group, even though he was young, and he was, like, young and naive and everything, but they treated him as an elite and as an equal. And you would think that with that, he would have pursued a path of academics or philosophy. Like, you think that he would have then gone on to be an Aristotle. But what's crazy is to think that he went on to be a warlord.
Well, you have such an... I don't want to, like, generalize and say you have such an understanding of humans, but you have, like, this, like, higher understanding of certain aspects of human life and belief and, like, kind of what's going on in the, like, not nobility, because they're philosophers, but, like, in that upper class, it's like, you know what, like, I'm gonna use this to my advantage, and I might manipulate this knowledge that I have.
Right? So it's so crazy to think that, especially Aristotle, who wrote the Nicomachean?
One of them.
Nicomachean Ethics, which is basically a book being like how to be a good person.
Yeah, crazy.
And so Alexander's learning from this guy, and it's crazy to think that being treated so highly and learning all this stuff from Aristotle, how he could even conquer people. Like, how he could... It's like thinking about how, like, learning how we know about animals now. How do we eat them? Like, that's some of the arguments for, like, being a vegetarian or a vegan. Like, how can with this knowledge we still do what we're doing? So same for Alexander. How can he go into battle knowing all this stuff about what it means to be a good person and what it means to be human and all these ideas flooding through his head, and he could still go in there and, like, absolutely demolish...
Kill a human,
demolish a family, like, do what he knows is bad.
And also get other people to do that, which where it's like you're using like this almost a psychological, philosophical knowledge of humans, and you're like, I kind of might use it, like I said, you kind of might use this to your advantage and just be like, I know how to take control, and I have this desire and this expectation from a young age, I'm just gonna do it. And obviously they brought Aristotle to me for a specific reason, and maybe it was to teach me these things so I could be a more well-rounded leader, aka a war weapon.
Yeah. And yeah, it was so baffling to read about the education, because I saw education as such a safe space for Alexander because of the lack of love he was getting from his actual father, Philip. And okay, this is the drama about being in this small circle. So at one point, he received life from Philip, but he was taught how to live by Aristotle, and he was hurt by Aristotle at one point.
What do you
because after being in such an elite group where they were like, yeah guys, we're only going to keep this between us, we're not going to write it down. He was so hurt because Aristotle published everything.
Whoa.
So the books we're reading now was like basically stabbing the back to Alexander, being like, this stuff that I'm telling you is so special. Like, Alexander thinks he's so special, and now Aristotle's telling him all this stuff. We're going to keep it between us because we're so special. Then Aristotle just publishes everything.
Oh my god.
For the public, who Alexander thinks he's so much better than.
I was gonna say, you are so much better, you think you are so much better than all these people, and then all of a sudden you are knocked down 100 million pegs from your quite literally high horse and quite literally like high up in the palace to you now know what just the regular people know. You are not special at all. Actually, I don't value you as much as I may have made you think. That's insane!
So we have a letter.
No way!
We have a letter from Alexander to Aristotle.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I've never heard of this.
Isn't that crazy? So, and I quote, so I'm Alexander right now, writing probably with quill on parchment.
Oh, you're
Do they have quills?
Probably not. Carving into stone on the side of a wall.
So Alexander says, Alexander to Aristotle, greeting. You have not done well to publish your books of oral doctrine, for what is there now for us to excel others in? If those things which we've been particularly instructed to be laid out open to all. So translation. Why did you publish this? You told us that this is what made us better. Now what do we have above everyone else? And then he says, for my part, I assure you, I had rather excel others in my knowledge of what is excellent than in the extent of my own power and dominion. Farewell. Translation. I would rather be smarter and wiser than everybody else than, and he says himself, Alexander, I would rather be smarter than everybody else than to have power and domination.
Whoa.
He said that, apparently, according to Plutarch.
Well, first of all, thank you for the translation.
Yeah.
Much appreciated. Second of all, if you're smarter than everyone, hear me out. If you're smarter than everyone, could you not also get power over them all?
Yes, but
he doesn't want that, though.
He doesn't want that.
He
just wants to be smart for smart's sake. It's kind of like university now. Learning for learning's sake.
I'm trapped there.
I know. I just want to be a student forever.
Please.
I'm trying to be Alexander. I'm like, why are you making this free?
Minus all the conquering and all the murder and stealing.
But yeah, he said himself that he would rather have wisdom than power.
Whoa.
And so when you think, I guess we haven't really outlined what he did. But Alexander conquered the entirety of Persia. And I would like to say, you think about that and you're like, oh, that doesn't sound that exciting. It took years. So many years, so many lives lost, so much money, so much
resources.
Resources. It was pure colonialism.
Yeah.
These were all places which were considered foreign, so you can think of like modern day Turkey, modern day India, modern day other places that are in that area that I can't think of.
I'm bad at geography.
I'm really great for a classics major that were terrible at geography.
Well, the good thing is, all the maps are different, so it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
All the maps are different, all the names are different.
Just know that, like, the colonialism that we're dealing with now that happened, like, when settlers came to Canada, it's extremely similar. It's pretty much identical to what Alexander did to all these people. So up, like, in the 21st century now, of course, we're acknowledging, like, what we did and how that affected people and the trauma that caused and the absolute degradation of, like, identity for Canada as a whole. Like, we completely came in and just, like, boom, 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 quite literally with swords, pow, pow, you don't matter. Now this history is our history.
Yeah.
So Alexander did that on the largest scale ever at this point in history.
That's terrible.
Yeah. Alexander the Great, more like Alexander the Terrible.
Yeah, that's...
Maybe he's related to Ivan.
I was trying to think of something to say about Ivan with his hats.
So yeah, so just emphasis. He'd rather have more wisdom than power. And this is so much so that even on his conquest, he carried around with him a copy of the Iliad.
No way!
He carried it around like, I know that that's not a philosophical text, but like, it's just the fact that he was so reliant on literature. So also thinking about the Iliad, he's definitely like guising himself on Achilles. He's like, I want to be like Achilles, who's a demigod. And he probably saw himself in Achilles. And as we look into literature nowadays, I'd be like, I see myself in this person.
Oh, God,
I'm going to try to emulate this person, especially because his dad wasn't there for them to be a true father figure. Aristotle wasn't a whole figure to replicate himself off of.
He betrayed him.
He betrayed him.
We can say that.
Yeah. Olympias was a woman.
Olympias was a adulterous woman.
Yeah. He didn't have very many... Okay, I don't know if he didn't have any friends. Now I'm just making up lies. He was a loner.
Well, sorry. I really want to say... How old was he, like, around this time where he's, like...
It doesn't say the exact age, but based on my calculations, he would have been around, like, 16, 17.
Oh, I was thinking, like, 18, 19, so that's kind of even worse.
Maybe. Like, I'd say within 5 years.
Teens.
He's in the teens. He's a teen. He's a teenager. And from my own experience of being a teenager, I was very sensitive.
Oh my God, life was the biggest deal.
Yeah. And
everything meant everything.
And even as we see fictional characters now, Homer was considered history. Like, they thought, and it may still have happened, but, like, in my brain, like, seeing a figure like Katniss Everdeen.
Oh God, yeah. The greatest warrior, essentially, like, in the Iliad.
Yeah.
Like,
so it's like nowadays seeing Katniss Everdeen and being like, I want to be like her. Like, I want what I do to make as much of a difference that Katniss Everdeen did.
Or alternatively, in Divergent, with, I believe her name is Triss.
I've never seen it, but you go off.
Well, she, like, basically the whole thing is that she can choose which path to take. Oh. She can either choose, like, the more, like, well, she can choose any of the paths, I believe, but she chooses the one that it's, like, courageous, dauntless is what it's called. And they're, like, courageous, and they're just, like, out of all these other groups, they're, like, so brave, and they're the warriors, and they're the fighters, whereas there's ones that are, like, the peacekeepers, there's, like, the lawmakers, there's the people who are super humble. Humble. And she chooses. She makes that choice, and nobody thought she was going to make that choice.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think that's exactly right, is seeing that, being like, I can choices.
Yeah. So I think he just reached a point where he was like, his dad dies. Spoiler alert.
What?
Philip dies.
How?
I had it written down somewhere.
I have too many questions, and...
You have too many questions, and I have no answers.
Well, that's because we're kind of dealing with the more... the deeper stuff. We don't want to know what year he died.
It was something along the lines of...
He probably died in war or got sick.
No, I actually do know what happened. This was in the movie. And I remember reading about it and being like, wait...
the primary source.
The primary source, Alexander with Brad Pitt. But his dad died at the wedding of his cousin because Philip was poisoned.
Whoa.
And so then...
More betrayal!
And they thought that it was Olympias because... I remember reading this in the ancient text too, because I read it and I was like, whoa, Angelina Jolie really did do a good job. And it was along the lines of, like, she wanted, like, Philip was being mean to her and, like, was kind of pushing her out of the picture of Alexander as he got older, being like, you're no longer important. Like, it's Alexander City. Like, Alexander's the main person here. And she's like, I want fame.
Well, I know
I think that's just like proposed that happened.
Yeah. Well, I know you're an Alexander head, but I've been big on Augustus lately, and Livia supposedly basically did the exact same thing where she's like, I want my sons to get forward, and Livia was not Augustus's mom, but like she's like supposedly wanted her sons to have power. So she was just murdering and poisoning and manipulating. So
Yeah.
you know, there's this theme of women connected with serpents and being evil. Serpents.
And the modern day usage, you're a snake.
But yeah.
It's still used today.
Yeah.
Literally
you are
nothing
a snake.
Has changed. Whoa.
I'm kidding.
But yeah, so like she was just trying to find her place, and also killing off Philip, if she did do that, would have made Alexander go immediately into power.
Oh.
So that would have solidified not only her offspring's success, but her own.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much all the background I have about Alexander. But just to reinstate, extremely insecure political and social stability. Like, no stability, actually. Macedonians were not doing well. They needed therapy.
Yeah. They were so hated.
So hated.
They were like,
yeah,
the lowest of the low. Well, in the Greek world.
Yeah. Alexander was born relating to two gods before he even was born, really. So, is he a demigod? Probably not, but everyone thought he was, so they had really high expectations. Philip, bad dad, but also not a bad dad.
Well, not the best dad. He was nice once.
Ambiguous father figure, and probably wasn't there a lot.
The bar's really low.
The bar's really low. Olympias loved her son toxically.
A lot.
Like, too much.
Yeah.
Because it was all about her. And then Aristotle, the father figure we thought we wanted, but we ended up not needing because he betrayed us.
So much betrayal, so much, like, insecurity, so much confusion.
Yeah.
I'm scared for what's gonna happen.
Yeah, so what that just meant, I think, for Alexander as a character, before we get into the actual, like, what he did and the crimes and relating to the art, is just that he had a tumultuous upbringing.
Crazy.
He had a very troubled upbringing, and I think that is a lot of the root for why he did what he did and why he thought what he did was okay.
Yeah.
He was just simply trying to prove to everybody what they all expected of him.
Yeah. Well, you could use the excuse. They kind of ask for that.
Yeah.
By telling him, hey, do all this stuff, and then he does all these things to, like, the millionth degree, and he's like, well, you told me to be great.
Yeah. And there's this guy, Arian of Nicomedia, and he said, I think very well, it really sums up kind of what we did here, just breaking it down. He says, whoever therefore reproaches Alexander as a bad man, let him do so. But let him first not only bring before his mind all of his actions deserving reproach, but also father into view all his deeds of every kind. Translation. If you think Alexander's a bad guy, so be it. Like, think that way if you want to, but also acknowledge everything that built him up to what he is now.
Wow.
So this guy was psychologically deconstructing before it was even cool.
He agrees with us.
Yeah. It says, father into view all of his deeds of every kind. So, like, were his deeds bad? Yes, but also, like, think about where he came from, and I think that just informs, like, how we should be analyzing things as a whole.
Yeah, and also think about why he did.
Yeah.
He was a ruler.
Yeah.
Rulers needed to secure their power.
Mm-hmm.
And they also, when you have a growing, like, powerhouse of Greek, and you're kind of stuck in the middle of Greece and Persia, like, you've got to be a little bit strong.
Yeah.
At least a little, so.
Yeah, and all of this, I would say, arguably, in regards to crime, because that is the main topic of this deconstruction, I'd like to call it, relating it to crime, the entirety of his childhood is his motive.
Absolutely.
His motive is his upbringing.
And motive, like, a lot of, like, criminal behavior and things like that, like, a lot of it stems right back to the childhood. They usually go back to those first institutions of the family and, like, the schooling and stuff like that. And that's what we saw is we the family life was rough, the school life was rough,
Yeah.
the, like, social political climate was terrible. So to imagine, like, growing up in that, you were just so, like, whatever I do, someone's not gonna like it.
Mm-hmm. And there are theorists like Erik Erikson, Sigmund Freud. We could, like, totally deconstruct Alexander and be like, talking about Alexander and, like, the id, ego, and superego, like, his ego was, like, prevailing the most, which, that would be way too much modern bias. Have I done it? Yes. But we're not going to talk about it here.
We'll talk about it later.
We'll talk about it later. That's a little side topic. But, like, it's acknowledging how much his upbringing is overlooked. And even in the history books, like, tell me why Plutarch is the only person to write about this. Like, even, like, aside from Alexander, all of these people doing all these crazy things, like, how are we supposed to learn from it if we can't see the root of the problem?
Yeah. Well, like, to answer the why is Plutarch the only one writing about it, probably because he's Macedonian.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Plutarch isn't, Alexander is.
Yeah.
Why would a Greek care about Macedonian history?
Mm-hmm.
That is bizarre. So maybe Plutarch really saw something and was like, hey man, we gotta write this down because it's gonna come back.
And, like, I know it's like what is that called? History is told by the victor.
Yep.
That, I don't know, that's called a saying, a common saying, a trope.
No, it's like a thing.
It's a saying.
A proverb.
A proverb.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. But history is told by the victor.
Truly.
And with that, usually the victor's not telling you about how dad was mean to his son.
They don't want to
Usually,
that.
they're only giving our history books right now is a highlight reel.
Yeah.
And so, like, we don't need to know about the other things. And that's why there's no source material, because they simply did not care.
No, they're like, why would I write down, like, I have limited stone. I
have limited pieces of terracotta.
Do you know how hard it is to make parchment? I don't know what they wrote on. But whatever it is, I'm paying 1 million guys to write this stuff down, and I can't erase it again. So I've got to just throw the one thing in. It's like that one time where they had, like, finished, I don't know if it was Roman or Greek, but they finished writing the news of the day, and at the very end, it said, the emperor has died. Because they were like, oh my god, this happened. We finished the news. It took us all day, and he died at night. So they were just like, get back there.
Added at the end.
So it's like, why would you write all the little boring stuff when you can just, you have limited space?
Exactly, but the boring
Your word
stuff...
count is so small.
I know, troubles of an academic. But the boring stuff is what's so important, and, like, I just want to reiterate, like, looking into the crime, like, I just constantly want to be going back to, like, why? Like, why did he do this? What in his childhood, what in his upbringing informed his way of thinking? Like, you can think of a warlord and just be like, they're crazed by fame. But, like, why was he crazed by fame? And we see why he's crazed by fame. Yeah. We see that it's because he had something to prove his entire life. He was born with all these expectations, and he just consistently was like, I'm never going to be enough. Which, like, honestly, I relate to.
Yeah, man,
This guy was so toxically productive.
Whoa. Yeah, that one's tough. Actually, I gotta go, because I gotta really read a paper one night.
Yeah, like, he was just so toxically productive, and I just want that to be in everyone's mind as we proceed with further deconstruction.
Yeah. It truly is crucial. Like, I don't think we can stress enough how crucial it is that these are not just figures. They were people who existed, and because we have so little about why and what the aftermath was, you need to have this basis to understand, like they weren't just going around doing it for no reason. There was always something going on.
Yeah.
And moving forward, that is always going to be drilled in. I got my jackhammer, I'm drilling. My Phillips screwdriver.
Yeah, I think we're good there. I feel like we deconstructed that.
Oh gosh, yeah. That
I'm
was like
so
40
sorry.
minutes.
You think that was an hour and 9 minutes? That was an hour and 9 minutes of pure Alexander bliss.
Good luck cutting that down.
I won't. I simply
Sorry,
won't.
Professor.
Sorry, Susan.
Apologies.
No, but thank you so much for listening. I hope you had as much fun as we did. That felt like story time.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna, like, go home and I'll be like, me, because this was my, like, this is the most, well, actually, I'm not gonna sleep, because that was actually genuinely so cool.
Right?
I
so
knew
glad.
very little of that.
Mm-hmm.
I said maybe I would hear a little tidbit. You lost me at, like...
You lost me at Alexander has multiple brothers.
You lost me at, the, like, birth story. That was it.
Yep.
But that was it.
No, I'm so glad. It's so surprising that he's so famous and nobody knows this. Like, I say nobody, as there's many scholars talking about it.
Oh my god, there's
but
so many, but
not
the general
knowledge.
public.
Yeah.
And, like, I think when we think of, like, this topic, you do not think of going all the way back, even though the British Museum exists.
Yeah, but it's almost like when you learn about German history and you're like, let's talk about Hitler's childhood. It's like, I feel like the general public knows that, kind of. Like,
he dropped out of arts, or he got kicked out of art school.
That's kind of all I know.
That's it.
But I feel like
he wrote a manifesto.
Yes.
His struggle. That's what it is.
Mein Kampf.
His struggles.
Yeah.
My struggles.
My struggles.
But it's like...
So yeah, like, we're looking into the characters of modern leaders and modern conquerors and modern, arguably, villains. I think Alexander was a villain in a lot of people's minds.
Oh, definitely.
But so I think it's interesting to use that same critical analysis and apply it to these super ancient guys who I feel like we've just completely forgotten about.
Yeah.
Not forgotten about in the sense of, like, they're not relevant, but forgotten about the fact that, as you said, they're people.
Yeah. Anyways, with that, good night. Thank you so much.
With that, bonsoir. Have a good night and have sweet dreams about Alexander
and his
being
weird
conceived.
mom.
Yeah, his weird mom.